Okay. Well, let's get started here. I want to welcome everybody to our next episode of Take 5, Casual Conversations with our St. Louis Media Hall of Fame members. Today, I am very, very excited to welcome one of St. Louis's most beloved sportscasters over the years. And not only that, a gentleman who has been so involved in giving back to the community that you just know him by his first name, Zip. I want to welcome today Chris Zip Rzeppa to our show and say thank you, Zip, for being a part of this today.
Ken, it's great to see you. Great to be a part of it.
Well, and we are so thankful that you're part of the St. Louis Media History Foundation Hall of Fame for television broadcasting. Just as it said before, we're going to ask you 5 questions. Very simple questions. Just want to have a nice casual conversation with you.
Are there prizes, Ken?
What's that?
Are there prizes if I give them right?
No prizes, but just our endearing honor and gratitude for being a part of this.
Sure, great. This will be great.
I just want to start with a very simple question. And you burst onto the scene here in St. Louis. You didn't start in St. Louis, but you burst onto the scene, the mid 80s?
Yep, 1984.
1984. How did you get your start in broadcasting? What made Zip Rzeppa the sports broadcaster that he was?
Well, I went to Boston University to study at the School of Public Communication. Then it's now called the College of Communication. An esteemed college, still is today. And what a cast of characters there were studying for this industry. I wanted to be a sports writer when I went to school.
Really?
So, yeah. So I was studying journalism, and I was working for the school newspaper with a guy by the name of Bill O'Reilly, who was in the graduate program there. Bill wrote news, I wrote sports. And then I got working at the campus radio station, WTBU for Boston University, with a tremendous cast of characters. The station manager was George Schweitzer, whose dad was a bigwig with CBS, and George went on to become the director of communications for CBS TV. John Gambling was doing a little radio show. His dad was a big radio honcho in New York, and he went on to do a show called Rambling with Gambling on WOR, which became the top radio show in New York City. There was another guy doing a show by the name of Howard Stern.
Okay.
And he was a student. I had classes with Howard, and we worked at the campus radio station together. I was the sports director of the campus radio station. So anyway, we all got our degrees and headed off to make it in the world of broadcasting. Schweitzer and Gambling had the advantage of famous fathers in New York, which kind of helped them a little bit. Howard was kind of on his own and went off to become shock jock #1 and start that industry. And O'Reilly and I were like middle-aged guys who had no contacts, no help, no money, no nothing. And we decided to try to make it in local television. So Bill became a news guy. I became a sports guy. And in those days, Ken, there were only 3 stations in the local market doing TV. There was no cable, there was no internet, there was no print on demand or movies or anything else. It was all 3 stations in every market. So it was tough. The competition was tough. I like to say it was a lot like baseball. There was a comparison. In baseball, you start out at the lowest end in A ball, making nothing, hoping against hope you can make it up to the major leagues and become rich and famous. Well, the same way in TV. I started out in Fort Wayne, Indiana. O'Reilly started out in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Pennsylvania. This was A ball.
Right. When you were in Fort Wayne, what was the affiliate station?
It was Wayne TV, WANE, Wayne TV. Channel 15. It was a UHF market.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you were in A-ball.
2, 4, 5, 7. They had 15, 20, and 33. That's how small the town was. And I worked for Channel 15. Yep.
Okay.
I did weekend sports. I got the job. I had no money whatsoever. I slept on the couch of my boss's apartment. He was a young news director until I could find a place and find a job during the week because I was only doing weekends and they weren't paying me enough to live on. So that was my tremendous, glorious start in the television business.
That's rather glamorous, really.
Yeah, really glamorous. Yeah. Sleeping on that couch, man, it was good.
So you were in Fort Wayne, and then where did you go from Fort Wayne?
I moved up to Double A. I went to Saginaw, Michigan, the Flint-Saginaw Bay City market. So that was kind of the equivalent of baseball Double A. It was a full-time job too, so I didn't have to work on the side to make enough money to live. I could concentrate on being a sportscaster. So from there, I went to Cincinnati, Ohio. Got a break. I was 27 years old. I became the sports director of the NBC TV affiliate in Cincinnati, which was heady stuff for me at that time, coming out of Fort Wayne and Saginaw. Made it up to a major league town, which is very exciting. And Cincinnati was great. I mean, at that time, they had the Big Red Machine.
I was going to say, what was
and Joe Morgan and Pete Rose and all those guys, and the Bengals and Xavier basketball and all kinds of stuff going on. So it was a fun place to be. From there, I went back to my, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, you just mentioned the Bengals. Now, I also did some background reading. There was a little song that you put together that was actually kind of popular, the Ballad of the Bengals. When did the music side of Zip start coming out?
You know, that's an amazing story because I have no musical ability whatsoever, but I always believe that we should entertain. The Bengals were having the first great season they ever had in 1981. And I could sense this team was going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote a song called The Ballad of the Bengals to entertain the folks. And, you know, it was crazy. I was just a sportscaster. I had no musical background. So there was this bar in St. Louis. I used to go and watch this band play at this bar on Saturday nights, and they were pretty good. So I said, hey, could you guys lay down a music track for me? I want to record this song.
Yeah.
And since I couldn't carry a tune, I would have to sort of rap the lyrics. But Ken, this was before rap was invented. This was 1981. So it's kind of a country rap version of the song. And we put it out. And we had no marketing or anything back in those days. So we got every Quick Trip and mobile gas station to put it on the counter. It was $2, the Ballad of the Bengals. And it was in December, and the team kept winning, and it predicted the Bengals would make it to the Super Bowl for the first time ever and win the Super Bowl. And as they kept winning and winning and winning, the song kept selling and selling and selling. And it did become the fastest selling record in the history of Cincinnati. All the stations started playing it because it was the only song about the Bengals. So it was crazy. I got the names of about 45 of the 53 guys in the team into the song, which I think helped sales a little bit.
Oh, wow. I found it on YouTube. So I'll put the link to the song itself on our YouTube description below. But I had to laugh when I saw that. So, all right. So
there's Ken Anderson a throwing behind that big offensive front to Collinsworth and Curtis, so they rarely have to punt. There's Steve Kreiner out of Lehigh, David Verser, ML2, and Danny Ross and Patrick Mack. There's nothing they can't do.
I had to laugh when I saw that. So, all right. So you made it then to Cincinnati.
Yes.
What was the next step in the career move?
Next step was moving to a bigger station in Boston, my college town, the 6th biggest market in the country. I was hired at Channel 7. And ironically, that brought about a reunion with one of the guys I went to college with. First day of my job at Channel 7, I walk in and I see Bill O'Reilly. And I said,
wow.
O'Reilly, what are you doing here? He said, they just hired me to do the news. What are you doing here? I said, they just hired me to do the sports.
So you two didn't know that you were going to be working together?
8 years after we left BU, we got hired by the same station on the same day in Boston, unbeknownst to each other. So there we were.
Oh, that's funny. Now, do you still keep in contact with Bill? Do you still talk with him?
Oh yeah. We're good friends. We've been all over the world together. We're very, very close friends. I talk to him about every week, and
Oh wow,
we're good friends.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
But it was wild when we got the job because we were the happiest guys in the world. We were young guys making it in the 6th biggest market in the country. I mean, this was the major leagues, and we were so excited. And a year later, we both got fired. They fired us together. They hired us together and they fired us together.
Yeah, that's the way to go, I guess. So.
Right.
Well,
we didn't do anything. We didn't do anything untoward. I want to make that clear. It was just we were colorful guys, and the station was in last place. And the news director brought in colorful guys, O'Reilly to do the news and Zip to do the sports.
Mm-hmm.
And the station got sold 6 months later. to a company that was very conservative. And they brought in a new news director who was totally vanilla.
Okay.
And he said, you guys shut up, read what the writers write and go home. And that's it. And that wasn't exactly Bill and me. So it didn't work out.
That wasn't quite the style.
No, right.
Well, after you left there, then that's when you came to St. Louis, correct?
Correct. 1984.
1984.
Ken, I was scared to death. I lost my job in Boston where I loved being. And I came to St. Louis. And when I got here, it was kind of shocking. Let me set the stage. When I was in Boston and got the job, they put me up in a suite at the Marriott Long Wharf Hotel overlooking Boston Harbor. Very nice. When I got to St. Louis after driving 1,200 miles and arriving about midnight in 1984 in the winter in January, I found out that Channel 2, my new employer, would put me up at the Howard Johnson's Motor Lodge off Highway 44. And I thought, whoa, is this a temporary job? I mean, come on. And that's how I got to St. Louis. And I was further scared, Ken, because in my little motel room in the Highway 44, off Highway 44, the Howard Johnson's Motor Lodge, I turned on the TV to watch my competition. Mm-hmm. And the guys were very professional and they were well dressed and everything. They did the sports, but they were normal. And I was crazy. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is what St. Louis is like, is what they're used to. I don't know if they're ready for what I'm going to do. And if I lose this job, I'll be working in Alaska covering sled dog racing for the rest of my life. Yeah. I was going to add a little color to the scene. That was the only way I knew how to do it. And I could tell you a story behind that. That's a long story. But
please share.
Well, okay. When I was in Saginaw, trying to get out of Saginaw and make it to the major leagues, I would take my tapes and my broadcast to major markets on my vacation. Whenever I had a vacation, I traveled to major cities, showed them the tape. I was in Philadelphia one time with this bright new news director. I said, I'll go to see him. So I showed him my tape and I said, what do you think? He said, what do I think? I think, son, if you ever make it to a major market, you'll be the ugliest TV sportscaster in town. Oh. I said, not exactly the response I was hoping for. I was stunned, Ken. I said, well, what can I do to make it? He said, son, if I were you, I'd be different. I said, different? What do you mean by different? So he told me about a guy in New York that used a lot of fast-paced tapes and video, a guy in Washington who threw humor into his sportscast, a guy here doing this and that and everything else. And I took that advice back to Saginaw. I said, man, I better become different. So I began to experiment and do different things on the air. It was a small market, so I could do that. And I'd do crazy things, and I would keep what worked and throw out what didn't. And I developed a style that by the time I was 27, I was in Cincinnati. And by the time I was 30, I was in Boston. And then after that, I was in St. Louis. So it was working, but that was what I was going to go with when I got to St. Louis, of course. It was the only thing I knew to be successful.
Well, and it's funny too, because so many of the things that you did originally, we just take for granted now. Like the sports highlights, the Zippo awards, the antics, those promotion, the self-promotion, things of that nature.
Right. It really was the forerunner. I was ahead of my time because I had to be, of the top 10 plays of the week on ESPN and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, all those different things, all those crazy show concepts that came up. We were putting into the sportscast back in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then from KTVI, you went over to KMOV.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. That was in 1988.
Okay.
It was pretty heady stuff. There was a huge bidding war for my services. 2 wanted to keep me, 4 wanted to hire me, 5 wanted to hire me. So I had an agent in New York, and he had meetings with all of them. And anyway, we decided to go to Channel 4. Okay. And I signed a 5-year, no-cut, guaranteed contract, which was unheard of at that point in time in local TV. And 6-figure signing bonus, which again was incredible. But we had leverage because we had 3 stations fighting over me. So
wow, that's a lot different from being in Fort Wayne, huh?
Yeah. Now you make enough money to live. Correct.
And I'm assuming then you finally got out of the Howard Johnsons as well.
Yeah. They left me there, but I found a home.
And then there came a point where you just decided to put broadcast behind you. What were some of your rationale or reasons for that?
Ken, I really burned out. I absolutely love doing television sports. I mean, it's all I ever did, professionally. And I love the work. I love the writing and the producing and the doing it on air. It was an exhilarating job, and to put together 3 sportscasts a day at 5, 6, and 10, and do the Sunday night show. And I love sports with a passion. And St. Louis at that time was a great sports town. You had the Cardinals making 3 World Series appearances in the 80s and everything else. Love the job. But I hated the hours.
Oh,
I mean, I would be there until midnight every night. And remember, this was every job I had since I got out of college. I was working until midnight because it was always the late news. On the East Coast, in Boston and Cincinnati, it was the 11 o'clock news.
okay.
So it didn't get off the air till 11:30. I wouldn't get out of there till 1 o'clock in the morning. In St. Louis, I'd leave at midnight every night. And, it wears on you. After 19 years of doing that in 5 different cities at 6 different television stations, I was burnt out.
Yeah.
Loved the job, but I knew that there was more to life than that, more to life than working all the time and having nowhere to see after you get off work, and getting off at midnight and going to sleep at 2 or 3 in the morning and getting up when everybody's already at work. It just enough emptiness in me. And I said, look, I love the job, but I got to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about what you're doing now a little bit later, but you were here, as you said, during the mid 80s and on, and there were some pretty memorable sporting events that were going on. What are some of the most memorable moments that you think of, especially when it comes to you in your professional broadcast career?
Well, I think covering the Cardinals in the World Series in 85 and 87 was just really, really exciting. They lost in 7 games in both those series. In 85, partially because Vince Coleman got run over by the tarp. And in 87, because Jack Clark couldn't play, he got hurt before the World Series. So, but those teams were just tremendous. But, people think it's glamorous. When Jack Clark hit the home run against the Dodgers that launched the Cardinals into the World Series in the NLCS in 1985, I was in the parking lot outside Dodger Stadium getting ready for a live shot. I didn't see it because we had 5 o'clock sports and the game was on a different channel. So... And then 1987, when the Cardinals should have won the World Series in Game 6 in Kansas City, the Don Denkinger call.
Yep.
Oh, man, do I wish we had instant replay then. That would have been overturned in a nanosecond. But anyway, the Cardinals lose, and everyone is so ticked off after the game. And I go down to the clubhouse to do interviews with the guys, which was a tough assignment because they were all angry. And John Tudor has his hand in a bandage. It's all bandaged up. And I said, John, what's happened to your hand? And he says, it's just nothing. And I said, no, somebody just told me you punched a fan in the dugout of a portable fan when you were frustrated and cut your hand, your pitching hand. He says, nah, he wouldn't come clean, And there I am going, well, what do I say? So anyway,
well, I'm glad you clarified that it was a fan, not a sports fan,
not a human fan,
right? Not a human fan.
The next night they lose Game 7, of course, and I love this team. All of St. Louis loved this team. They'd been jobbed before and lost the World because of Denkinger, and now they lose in Game 7. And that was the night that Joaquin Andujar took out a urinal with a baseball bat. He just took a bat to it and wow. So the things you were seeing behind the scenes, we didn't have that on film, but it was just amazing to be there and to feel the intensity of that World Series.
Now that's an interesting thought. Now you've been in sports. What's the parallels between the competition and the intensity in sports and the competition and intensity in broadcast?
I think there's a real parallel. I mean, I had to fight the battles every market I was in. It was high stakes. I got fired in Boston, as I said. I did well in St. Louis, so I had a lot of leverage for contracts and things. But every quarter, there would be rating books, and your career depended on whether the ratings were good, because if ratings for a station weren't good, they had all these consultants coming in saying, make some changes, and either the news or the weather or the sports guy or some of the reporters would be given the gate, So there was pressure there, just like in sports. If the team's winning and everything is going great, but if the team's in last place, they're going to make some changes, and people are going to be kicked out of that city and have to look for another place to live. So the competition, there is a parallel between sports and competing in the media.
Interesting. Well, what other major events or memorable events have you seen here in St. Louis?
Oh my goodness. I think, after I left the air, the Rams winning the Super Bowl was just incredible. The Kurt Warner story, just incredible. I don't know. I mean, just the joy of being a sportscaster was every day you were challenged to put something on the air, and every day something was happening. When I say I was a sportscaster, people say, "Oh, what sport did you cover?" And I say, "Well, I covered them all. I was on here doing the news five days a week and a half-hour show on Sunday. Whatever was happening, I was covering it." And that was the joy of it. You covered all major sports, college sports, professional sports, major sports. I achieved my goal. Now, when I was in Saginaw, I was covering things like free throw shooting contests and possum hunts and frisbee tournaments and stuff. That wasn't so exciting, but when I made it to the major league towns, that was good.
Now, did Fort Wayne have their minor league baseball team back then?
No, they had the Fort Wayne Comets in the International Hockey League.
Okay.
Covered them. Then I went to Saginaw. Saginaw had a team in the International Hockey League, the Saginaw Gears. It was named after the Saginaw Steering Gear Factory, which made the steering gear for General Motors cars. They shipped it 100 miles south to Detroit and put the steering gear on the cars. And that was covering that league was exciting. I mean, fights were like regular. This is 2 rungs below the NHL. It was either young guys just starting out or grizzled veterans who never were going to make it, and we're going to take it out of the young guys who were trying. So
that kind of sounds like the movie Slapshot.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
I mean, Saginaw Gears averaged 5,000 fans a game in little old Saginaw. The people who work in the Saginaw Steering Gear Factory, that was their entertainment. And they came and they loved the fights, and it was crazy. It was just minor league hockey at its best. It was like Slapshot.
Yeah. Well, now you've covered then St. Louis hockey as well. And there were some great years. I mean, first of all, having the Stanley Cup now was just a dream come true for all of us. But even the years that you were covering, you had Brett Hull, Adam Oates, Brendan Shanahan. What are some of your memories of covering Blues hockey?
Hully was my favorite because, most guys give those pat answers, those standard, don't want to tick anybody off answers. Hully would say what he meant and what he was feeling, which was great. So I loved interviewing him. He was great. But those teams at Hull and Oates, oh man, they were bringing up points. Bernie Federko was one of my favorites. And Bernie actually started his broadcast career on Sunday nights. We were doing a Sunday night show, and while he was still playing, we would have him come in after the Blues were every year eliminated in the playoffs back in those days. And Bernie would be our commentator about what was going on in the playoffs.
Oh. So you gave Bernie Federko his big break?
Yeah, I guess you can know. Well, we started him out. It was his first broadcast experience.
Oh, he seems like a great guy.
Same with Joe Buck, by the way. When Joe Buck was in college at the Indiana University, his dad came to me and he said, TV's where it's at. I've been a radio guy most of my life, but TV's where it's at. I got a son. I think he's pretty good. Could you help him get an internship at Channel 4? I said, yeah, Jack, we'll work on that. I think we probably pull that off. Mm-hmm. And so we did. So Joe Buck came and he was my intern when he was 19 or 20 years old. And wow. He left Indiana University after 3 years, never graduated. And by the time he was 22 or 23, he was doing the Cardinals games on KMOX. So he didn't need me, Ken. So I'm not taking no credit for Joe's career, but his first television experience was with me at Channel 4 as an intern.
That's great. Now, after you left then, and we'll talk again of what you're doing now in your career, but you then got involved in a lot of nonprofit work and charity work and things like that. If you think about memorable moments, you have your sports career, but now you have this other side of your life. What are some of the memorable moments you have within your new work?
Well, I really had a spiritual deepening after I left TV. I wanted a day job. I didn't want to work till midnight anymore after 19 years. So I started doing evangelization in the inner city of St. Louis, knocking on doors, inviting people to learn about the Lord. And I was working with a guy who was working at MERS Goodwill. And he said, well, why don't you come and see where I work? So I did. And I took a job there developing jobs for people with extreme disabilities, physical and mental disabilities, helping them find jobs. It was a very low paying job, a very humble job, but an important job because it made a difference in those people's lives. And I stayed there for about 7 years. Eventually, they kicked me upstairs to vice president of public affairs or something where I could help all of our programs there. And then from there, I went to the Society of St. Vincent de Paul and became their executive director. I was overseeing 3,000 volunteers in 142 parishes all across greater St. Louis, serving the poor, the needy, the suffering, wherever they were. And then after 5.5 years there, I went to Angel's Arms, which is a small agency to help foster kids. Foster kids were being separated from their siblings because foster parents didn't have big enough homes to take in 2 or 3 in a family, and they'd take in 1, and there go the brothers and the sisters to some place where they may never see them again. So Angel's Arms started big houses that could house the siblings and keep them all together. So I was managing director there, very worthy work. And then I just felt a calling to go back to media and use my journalistic skills. And I wanted to write a book, so I didn't want to fight the publishers. So we started a not-for-profit to write, print, publish, and distribute books to evangelize. That was the beginning of it. And we started that in 2012. And now in 2020, the mission has expanded. Our mission is to make Jesus Christ more known and more loved by more people through media. And we do that through movies and music and online videos and DVDs and CDs and books and all kinds of stuff.
Well, good. And we'll dig into that a little bit later, because now I'm on question 3, if you can believe it. Question 3.
Okay.
When you think of how you've developed professionally, what would you consider as your work ethic? How do you go about improving your craft? And again, this could be from your broadcast days, or it could even be, from where you are now.
Well, I think back to the broadcast days. I mean, again, after being tipped off by the guy in Philly that I wasn't going to make it on my looks, I had to work very, very hard. And that's one thing I could do. I could outwork the other guys, So every night after my sportscast, I would go home and the station, before they had VCRs, I would watch the sportscast and I'd watch the other guys and I'd say, well, what did we do better than them? Or how could I be better? And I was very hard on myself because I wanted to improve. I knew I had to improve to get out of the Fort Waynes and Saginaw's and move up. So I spent all kinds of time just dedicating myself to coming up with different things to entertain as well as inform people with sports. So during my days before I go in to do the 5, 6, and 10 o'clock sports, I'd look for odd little stories. There wasn't any internet back then, so you had to go to USA Today or make phone calls to other markets or all this other stuff. It was hard work, but I would come up with little tidbits that I might be able to throw into the show. So I think dedication was a key to the success, and the hard work and the determination to not just read the scores.
So it also sounds like, when we see people on TV, or again, when we see athletes, we don't think about the hours and hours and hours of preparation and years of, working on that, single A team up to double A, up to triple A. So it sounds like you had a lot of that type of background.
For sure. I mean, people think I had the softest job in the world. They say, well, you work for 3 minutes at 5 and 4 minutes at 6 and 4 minutes at 10. What do you do the rest of your time? But they have no idea that what goes into putting together a sportscast and producing it with the video and the timing and the writing and the stories and the decisions and what you're going to say and how to make it snappy and how to make it colorful, how to make it different, how to inform and entertain at the same time. It was a lot of work.
How'd you come up with the Zippo Awards, and what was the origin of that?
That's a great question. Actually, when I was in Saginaw trying to study guys that were successful, when the guy told me I had to be different, I would get tapes of guys who were different in the different parts of the country. And there was a guy in New York called Warner Wolf who did the best plays of the week. And I said, oh, that's pretty good. So I started doing the best plays of the week in the little old Saginaw with our little Frisbee tournaments and our skateboarding guys falling off the skateboard and stuff like that. And that worked pretty well. So then one time I threw in a guy dropping a pop-up, an easy pop-up. And so everybody laughed at that. I got a good response. So I started making the best and worst plays of the week. And then one time I threw in the San Diego Chicken, which was the first big time mascot in sports. And he was doing his crazy antics and everybody laughed and thought that was great. So it became the best, worst, and weirdest moments of the week. And then it kind of evolved when I went to Cincinnati. We kind of improved a little bit. Went to Boston. We found the Billy Joel music, the root beer rag music, the piano riff that played underneath it. So by the time I got to St. Louis, I pretty much had it down and could launch it in St. Louis pretty much well refined.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, we take it for granted, but that was something completely new when you were doing that.
Well, because the video is so hard to get. These days, everybody's got a phone in their pocket. These guys they're shooting every step of their little daughter at 3 years old or son of when their sports activities for their entire careers on video. Those days, unless a TV camera caught it somewhere, it was very hard to get. Then the video recorders came out. Some people were using those, but we had to work all week long to get that video, trading stations all over the country for funny stuff or asking parents to send in stuff for their kids when few were shooting it. No, could only afford a VCR and things like that. People used to tell me, oh, the Zippos are great. Why don't you do those every night? I was like, we can barely get enough stuff for once a week.
And how did you go about getting that? You said you traded stations, you had to pull it off, I guess, satellite feeds and,
satellite feeds.
Were you working with one of your producers to kind of put all that together?
Yes. My producer, Mark Halfman, was a great young guy. When I came to the station, he was part-time. He was bagging groceries at Schnucks and working as a part-time editor. And he caught the fire of what I was trying to do. So I asked the station to make him the sports producer. And he became our sports producer, worked with me for many, many years. Still working at Channel 4 behind the scenes, by the way.
Right.
And he's now in news. And that's what we're trying to do. So he worked so hard behind the scenes, calling stations and putting together the satellite feeds to feed something in and all this other stuff. And I would use my interns. Every college interns wanted to work at stations, so they gave me a couple interns every semester. And I'd say, look, you log this game. You watch this Mets against the Phillies game. I don't care, about the main score of the big, unless somebody defends, unless it wins the game, I don't care about, a single in the third inning scored a run. You find if a fan fumbles a ball or makes a great catch in the stands, that's what I want you to log, and we'll tape it after the show. And we found the interns started hoping that they would find something that would make the Zippo Awards.
Before we got together, I kind of asked if you had any clips of that, and you were saying, no, you don't really have any clips of that. Now, there are some that are on the internet, and we'll post those. We'll add the links into our YouTube, but you weren't able to keep copies of those Zippo Awards?
Nothing. I have nothing from my broadcasting career. I mean, those days, it was a different technology. They used to tape the entire newscast for legal purposes on 1-inch tapes, and they'd save them for a year. And because the tapes were very expensive, they'd tape over them for the next year. All my stuff got taped over.
Well, I'll put just a little plug in for what we do with the St. Louis Media History Foundation of trying to make sure we can preserve and share this type of information. So, I mean, that's what we're looking for, tapes and other materials. Now, interestingly enough, when you think about work ethic, there were some very highs in your career, but there were also some mistakes made. What did you learn from both of those?
Yeah, I learned when I got fired in Boston that the broadcast industry is a rough, tough place to be. I was out of work for 5 months
Wow.
before I got the job in St. Louis.
Now, set up the story of how you got fired in Boston, what you did.
Well, people say a factor in that, it may have been true, is the story when I was on the air the weekend of the Super Bowl.
And this was you and O'Reilly again. So
me and O'Reilly, it was
okay.
Sunday night. We were doing the news. We did a long sportscast and everything. And I predicted the Washington Redskins would lose to Dan Marino and the Miami Dolphins in the Super Bowl in January of 1982. Well, of course, Riggins ran all over the Dolphins and the Redskins won. So O'Reilly and I had to go on and do the late night news. So it came to the sports segment and he said, hey, the night before I made this prediction on the air, he said, hey, what happened to that prediction? I said, Bill, I got egg on my face, man. And I took a raw egg and I smashed it on my forehead on live television and the yolk ran down my face. No one knew I was going to do this. I had the egg under the desk. And the reaction was stunning. I mean, we had a woman co-anchor, Susan Burke, working with Bill. She started shrieking. The cameramen were falling on the floor laughing. And O'Reilly was throwing me a towel saying, that's great. What are you going to eat for breakfast? It was a crazy, crazy broadcast. But I was doing a lot of crazy things. I thought this is just one more crazy thing. But the reaction across Boston was just amazing. Both papers, the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald, hated it. They said he was unprofessional. How could he do something like that on the air? And Jim Baker was the columnist in the Boston Herald. For the rest of my months in Boston, whenever he wrote about me, my name wasn't Zip Rzeppa anymore. It was Zip Rzeppa, the man who smashed an egg in his face. That's every story. So anyway, station management didn't like it. I can't say that's the only reason they got rid of me. Like I said, the new guy came in and wanted vanilla across the board, and it wasn't going to work out. But yeah, you learn that you better be careful when you're doing live TV about the ramifications of things.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think back on that story, it doesn't even seem that crazy now.
No. But back then, people hadn't seen much. They pretty much read the scores and wore nice suits and ties, and that was kind of it back then.
How do you, I was thinking about this too, because I read some of the stories in the past from some of our media critics and things like this. How do you deal with the criticism that you receive in press media? In the type of situation where you're in a job where every day somebody's critiquing you, how do you deal with the negative press?
It's difficult. I mean, we're all human, and we like people to say nice things about us, and it hurts us when people say nasty things about us. So you're going to get that, when you're in broadcasting, when you're on TV, especially in a day when TV was so big. I mean, you had newspapers, radio, and TV back then. You didn't have hundreds of channels. You didn't have podcasts. You didn't have the cell phones. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have all kinds of entertainment, movies on demand. People basically watched the news religiously every night. I mean, we were doing like 300,000 viewers on a 10 o'clock sportscast every night of the week. 300,000 people watching, that number's about half now, I think, because people can get sports 24/7 on their computers. They want to watch highlights of a game or games on TV. Highlights are right there. So you were going to get criticism. There's no question about that. And, everybody's sensitive to criticism, but I just thought, well, some people are going to, especially being different. I knew some people were going to like it and some people were not. And that was, so there were probably more comments made about my style of doing sports than if I just sat there and was the regular guy doing the straight sportscast. But I figured, well, I'm trying to inform and entertain. I'm trying to do it the best I can do it to provide the best for the audience. And if some people don't like it, then I just have to take it.
Yeah. Well, now thinking back on your career, when you are out speaking or doing a presentation or maybe talking to that intern, what advice would you share with a young person coming up, either into the business or even just graduating and just in life in general? What advice can you share?
Well, I'd say try to find a career in something you really like to do. As a spiritual guy, I try to live my life to do God's will. I think if we pray and ask God what his will is for us, he's going to direct us to use the gifts and talents he's blessed us with in a way that's appropriate. He's not a deceptive guy. So if we find what our skill set is and what we really want to do and what we love to do and will be pleasing to the Lord, then throw yourself into it. My advice would be work hard, dedicate yourself, take your job seriously, try to perform the best duties every day that you can. And if you do that, I think pretty much you'll be successful.
Mm-hmm. Great. Now, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing these days. Bring us up to speed on life after TV. I know that you kind of talked about some of the nonprofit work you did, and then now getting into modern media. And I hope I said that right. Modern media. Yep. Okay. Modern media, and talk about your charity involvement, the modern media, what you're doing now, your books, your speaking engagements. What are you doing?
Well, it's been a great joy, Ken, to be able to MC events for charities around St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even count the number of charities that have asked me to be the MC for their fundraiser. It's dozens of them, and some have done 10 years in a row or 12 years in a row. And collectively, I can't even count the millions and millions and millions of dollars I played a small part in raising that money in MCing or being a guest speaker, or I even do auctioneering now because I did so many events. I thought I can do that auctioneering stuff better than that guy, and then maybe the auctioneer. So it's been fun, but that's been rewarding. The media business has been exciting too. I said we started out to print books, and then we got working with media companies. All our work is to give glory to God. So we work with movie companies that try to make movies that inspire. They're not always religious movies per se, but inspirational movies, the Hallmark type movies. And we're working with movie companies, a number of movie companies out in LA, and our work is three-pronged. Sometimes we raise money for them because it takes a lot of money to make movies. We have to convince people to put money in. Right. Sometimes we promote the movies after they come out. If it's a good movie, we want people to see it. And thirdly, we provide content for them. We suggest maybe you'd like to make a movie in one of our books, or maybe you want to take this storyline or this treatment and it could become a movie. So that's exciting work. We're working with people out of Nashville. Love Good Culture is a group of young people down there. Jackie Minton just put out her first CD. Been working with her since she was 21 years old. Also working with an incredible guy out of Louisville, Eric Jenis. He has a not-for-profit called Concerts for Hope. This guy is a world-class pianist and composer, composes incredible music. And for the last 10 or 12 years of his life, he's taken that skill set into prisons to bring the light of Christ into the darkest places in the world, prisons. And he goes in with a violinist and a cellist and a singer and his piano keyboard. I've been with him in South Carolina. I've been with him in Missouri. I've been with him in different places. And it's amazing to see these hardened criminals to whom classical music would be their least requested if you ask them, and see them brought to tears by the sheer beauty and the stories that Eric tells about how he wrote these songs. So it's a privilege to promote his work, Concerts for Hope. And it's exciting to work with movies and music and different genres of music, and write books and publish books of people that might never have a chance to get their book published. We love doing that. We got a book out called The Deal, which is a novel right now. Deal is on Amazon. It's called The Deal. It's a novel about a guy who was trying to make a big deal in business while his marriage was falling apart. And it's the story of whether he was able to hold his marriage together and realize what an important deal marriage is. It's pretty creative. It's got a couple of stunning twists. It's only 134 pages long. It's a real fast read, but if you go to Amazon.com, The Deal is out there.
It sounds like that could be a movie script as well.
Yeah, we think so. More than one person has said, "Oh, we could see that as a Hallmark movie." So who knows? God's will be done.
And you're the author of 2 books, correct?
Right. I wrote a book for teens called My Rockin' Salvation in 2014. We decided to give this book away to reach as many people as possible, and we got 20,000 copies out.
Wow.
It's a cool story, but the problem, Ken, was the protagonist was a guy trying to make it in the rock world as a singer, and his best buddy was a guy playing wide receiver on the Rams who had just signed a $66 million contract and bought the Maserati and was kind of a womanizer and everything else. But then when the Rams left St. Louis in 2015, it kind of crashed the book because the book has him going to Caldi's coffee shop and, working out at the Edward Jones Dome and all this stuff. When the Rams are in LA, young people have to think, wait a minute, the Rams aren't in St. Louis. What's this book about?
Yeah, it might be time. It might be time for a second edition, Zip.
Yeah, right. I have to write the sequel. Yeah. So I wrote my autobiography in 2015 called For a Greater Purpose. Okay. And that's been done very well. We're going to do a sequel to that in 2021 because it's been 6 years since the book came out. And a lot of things have happened since then. So we're going to do that and do an updated version of that one.
Oh, that's fantastic. And again, I'll put links to all of this and the websites that you mentioned. I'll put that in our YouTube description if anybody wants to get additional information, or the books are available, as you said, on Amazon.com or Modern Media. And what's that website address?
modernmedia.org.
Okay. And that's MATER media.org.
Yep.
Okay. Well, great.
Appreciate that.
Zip, it has been just a pleasure to catch up with you. And those were my 5 questions. Was there anything that I left out that you want to talk about?
No, I think they were great questions, Ken. A little disappointed I didn't get any prizes, but that's okay.
Well,
it's been a pleasure.
I've got to find a sponsor then for that.
Right.
So the St. Louis Media History Foundation is open for sponsorship. So if you want to donate,
I'm old enough to remember Groucho Marx. Say the secret word and you win $100, right?
I had the duck flying down, but I didn't.
The duck came down, right?
Well, Zip, again, thank you so much for joining me today. And I know that there were many, many people that are interested to hear what you're up to these days. You were able to touch many people's lives, not only in your broadcast career, but I know what you're doing now touches them deeply. So thank you so much for joining us.
You did it, Ken. It's been a great pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
In red, led by 3 at halftime. That's James Rzeppa with 2 of his game-high 30 after a nice bounce pass from Stanley. Watch this nice Strader fake. Nice fake, and the basket for Mike Strader for Umsel, but it wasn't nearly enough for them tonight. Watch SIUE come out on the fast break and get it ahead to Tim Goodwin. Nice dunk, SIUE winning it 95-81. Baseball scene, as we told you earlier today, Ricky Horton won his arbitration case. He'll receive $275,000 in 1986. In football news, Gene Stallings has hired Cowboys assistant Jim Schaffner as the Big Red offensive coordinator. And the USFL owners voted to go ahead and play their season this fall. Today, Generals owner Donald Trump was asked if the league could survive if it loses its lawsuit against the NFL next month.
I don't think there's a chance of us losing that battle. And anybody that knows anything about it, I believe, would agree that we don't feel that we even have a chance of losing the battle, so we don't have to address the subject. We'll discuss it at some time that might be appropriate, but I think we're going to win that fight, and we're going to win it big, and it's going to be a lot of money.
Well, if they win, it'll be $1.3 billion, and even to Donald Trump, yes, that would be a lot of money. In bowling, the $125,000 St. Louis Open.